NPHET became the de facto decision maker rather than simply an advisor to government. That is according to a new study by law experts in Trinity College. The report says some steps taken in the fight against COVID-19 were perhaps heavy-handed and has criticised a lack of transparency on how decisions were reached. And for more on this, we're joined by a scholar and PhD candidate at Trinity School of Law, Eustace. Alan, to summarise, I suppose, for people listening, because the report is big, your view on NPHET's relationship with government, was it a slightly dysfunctional one?
Thanks, Ciara. So we had, as you say, this is a wide-ranging report. We looked at decision-making processes for the government during the pandemic. We looked at the kind of restrictions that were necessary and were employed, and we looked at the sort of supports that were available to individuals to help them to manage those restrictions. Looking at that first one, the decision-making processes, we were very critical of the transparency around the role of NPHET as a decision-making body, and also of NIAC, it should be said. Similar concerns arise in respect of both of those bodies. So neither are statutory bodies, so it's not set out in law what their role is, how they are to be formed, and what sort of considerations they have to take into account. We criticised their lack of expertise in some areas.
Like
so
human rights.
Yeah, so that was certainly one of them. And earlier reports from the Observatory had flagged that some months ago. But I think it's worth pointing out again that, for example, with NPHET, early in the pandemic, there were subgroups formed within NPHET to examine specific issues. As the pandemic wore on, those subgroups disappeared without any obvious explanation as to why. And at no stage in the process within the, I think it's 38 members of NPHET at the last counting in this report, have there been experts from human rights, from rule of law and civil liberties groups, from specific groups within the population that are more affected by some of the vaccine.
So just to summarise, Alan,
than others.
A lack of transparency and a lack of expertise. And therefore, did you feel that the decision-making process of our democratically elected government and therefore accountability was undermined? We had two potential problems with accountability. Right? There's a kind of an accountability trap here is what we refer to it as. So either we have NPHET as an unelected body making decisions themselves, or we have the government, which have got democratic legitimacy, making decisions, but hiding behind the fact that, or hiding behind NPHET and thereby avoiding taking responsibility for those decisions themselves. Neither of those things are good. And while we're not, as legal academics, we're not in a position to examine the substance of all the decisions that have been made, we do have serious concerns about accountability and public transparency in the decision-making process. Look, thank you very much for bringing that to us this morning. That is Alan Eustace, PhD candidate at Trinity School of Law.